Hello mga kapechay! Welcome to another bonus edition of the Pechay Show. I'm Sharee and this is my sex tip of the day. Ngayong araw na to, ang pag-uusapan natin is about hookup negotiations. If you're thinking, are you really going to use the word negotiation kapag mag-hook up kayo? And the answer is yes. Pinag-usapan namin to, I think, in slight detail dun sa Usapang One Night Stands episode. But I just want to highlight this information and to spot the limelight sa need for negotiations before hooking up. Just to make it clear, pwede tong mag-apply sa mga one-night stands or fuck buddies or whatever social contract you have with somebody. Pwedeng friends with benefits kayo or just strangers who have sex regularly. It's 2020 and for the past decade, hookup culture has become very normal and it's a big part of our dating and sexual culture. And I believe na this part of culture is gonna stay for a while and it has its pros and cons, pero it will definitely affect how we navigate our way to looking for safe and satisfying sex, either with an old or a new partner. Yung skill of negotiating before having sex with someone is a very crucial skill, in my opinion. Of course, lahat tayo merong fantasies na at some point during the week, kaya nating mang-akit or maka-attract ng another person para mag-pave ng way towards the both of you having sex eventually. And unlike what we see sa movies, especially sa rom-coms, in real life, it takes a lot. It's not just about yung magkakatinginan kayo from the opposite sides of the room, tapos may smoldering eye contact, tas bigla you just wanna have sex, and yung hasty and super passionate removal of each other's clothes along the way bago pa kayo makarating dun sa kwarto. While that happens, hindi palagi yun yung case. So, the point of this episode is to highlight the importance of communication para maging safe and sure tayo na both of you will have the satisfaction and pleasure that you are looking for. Alam ko na, the term safe sex and negotiation and boundaries, these words, hindi sila yung pinaka-sexy na terminologies, but they are very important and crucial pagdating sa hookup culture. And at this point sa generation natin, they are very necessary to maintain sex positive and consensual experiences. So, paano natin gagawin yung negotiations? Paano natin ma-enjoy yung hookups na otherwise would be full of trials and errors or negative experiences na very unlike what we see in the media. So the very first thing that you need to know and to instill in yourself is kailangan very clear ka about what you personally want. What does this mean? It means alam mo dapat ano yung mga bagay na nagpapa-arouse sa'yo, mga bagay, what gets you hot, what gets you thinking about sex, what makes you come, and also what you don't want. As in, ano yung ayaw mong gawin sa'yo, ano yung ayaw mong gawin mo sa iba, and so on. The very first thing is all about safety. You have to ask yourself and put in context yung other person na kasama mo. Ano yung mga bagay na pwedeng mag-create ng safer space and encounter para sa'yo? For example, kailangan mo ba ng safe word? I think by now alam na natin ano yung safe word, but to define it, it's a word or probably a phrase na parang code word ninyo which either of you can say kapag yung sexual activity is becoming too much or it's stepping beyond your boundaries na hindi ka na komportable or possibly nasasaktan ka na. So you have to know bago pa makarating doon to say no and to let that other person know that this thing isn't exactly okay. It also encompasses safer sex, as in kailangan yung mag-agree na you have to use protection. And I think at this point, you would want to divulge kung ano man yung STI or STD history mo, if applicable. The other person deserves to know para sa sarili niyang protection as well. Next, you have to talk about boundaries. Similar sa safety, you should have enough time to really think about ano yung mga boundaries mo for yourself. Pwedeng yung boundaries na to, they revolve around what you are willing to do with the different parts of your body, and vice versa for the other person. Ano yung boundaries mo when it comes to things like sobriety and possible drug use? Like, is it a big no-no for you to be drunk while having sex or to use drugs before or during sex? Like, some people like it, but you might not. And if we're talking about safety, it sounds very parental, pero I would advise not to be too drunk or too high before you have a hookup. Also, mako-cover din sa boundaries would be if you are very sensitive when it comes to verbal stuff during sex, like the other person might have a tendency to call you a certain word, or pwedeng prefer niya na tawagin mo siyang something pero hindi ka comfortable with either of those things. These are things you can also talk about. Pero kung wala ka namang restrictions in terms of these things, then you can just proceed. After boundaries, you should also talk about triggers. And what I mean by triggers is something na pwedeng mangyari or masabi ng other person na pwedeng mag-cause ng emotional or mental shutdown in your case. Like, hindi natin masasabi if, for example, you might have a traumatic experience in the past na hanggang ngayon still affects you, even if you're a functioning adult. So, similar to boundaries, these are things that you can communicate with the other person para maiwasan yung negative effect from happening in the first place. So, next we can move on to the more fun parts of negotiating. Hindi lang naman siya about rules and regulations. Next, you have to talk about desire. In the first place, bakit ka nag-agree to hook up with this person? Ano yung gusto mong makuha sa experience? And I know it's obvious na gusto nyo mag-sex, but that's a very general blanket term, you know? So if you're looking for something specific, you have to communicate na gusto mo siya. For example, are you looking for anal sex? Are you looking for a quickie? Are you looking for a role-playing scenario? Gusto mo bang may bondage or, some sort of S&M? Whatever it is that you are looking for. Hindi mo siya for sure ma-achieve unless alam nung tao yon. So, if you communicate it and payag siya dun sa gusto mong gawin, the chances of you actually experiencing it and fulfilling your, desires become greater. Finally, you have to talk about your end goal. What's your objective? Similar sa desire, you need to let the other person know, and you have to know sa sarili mo kung ano yung outcome na gusto mo. Is it enough for you to be able to come? Or gusto mo ba ng tender sex? Gusto mo ba ng aggressive sex? Gusto mo bang binibitin ka? As in, when it ends, you want to feel like you want more out of that person or out of that experiences? Gusto mo bang nasty sex? Gusto mo bang quickie? Gusto mo bang magpalitan kayong numbers at the end? Or is it a one-time thing na after you're done, you just both walk away and go on your own ways? So that's the overall idea when it comes to hookup negotiation. It's literally a negotiation. And since lahat ng mga diniscuss natin are from your part, you have to also listen to the other person kung meron siyang gustong i-negotiate. And hopefully, things work out, that you might be able to agree with each other and find a common middle ground na pwede kayong mag-enjoy with each other safely and satisfyingly for it to be an overall positive experience. The point of the negotiation is to get into a hookup experience knowing ano yung gusto mo, what you desire, what you're lusting for, and what you need. I know ang haba ng episode na to, it's like 10 minutes or longer, but in reality, these negotiations, they happen very quickly. Especially kung hindi siya first time mo. I get that if it's your first time, you probably have a lot of questions and a lot of concerns. Marami kang mga bagay na hindi ka sure. But it does get easier. Like, as soon as your second experience, meron ka ng template almost that parang memorize mo na sila na alam mo nang itanong and sabihin bago kayo mag-sex. It's similar with what I mentioned dun sa one night stand episode where bago kami magkita nung guy, napag-usapan na namin lahat ng do's and don'ts. It's similar to that, and you should always know what makes you feel safe and comfortable and what makes you satisfied kasi yun naman yung point ng lahat ng to. Kasi otherwise, why else would you subject yourself to an experience kung wala ka namang pleasure na makukuha out of it? So that's it. I hope you liked this clip, and I hope everyone has more safe and satisfying sex across the board. Goodbye.